In the final chapter of my book, titled Integrity in Research, we take the statistical thinking skills we have learned to question the quality of statistical analysis put forth by researchers. Again, we go beyond the news headlines to the source of the research, the journal article, to determine the quality of the research for ourselves. I begin with a classic example that helps spark what is known as the replication crisis in psychology, when a researcher claimed to have found strong statistical evidence of the existence of ESP, or extrasensory perception. I also question the quality of a controversial piece of research by another researcher who claimed that taking 2 minutes to pretend you're Superman or Wonder Woman, known as power posing, will drastically increase your willingness to take risks. This process of questioning the use and misuse of statistical analysis will solidify your statistical thinking skills. It will also help you see the need to always question the quality of research, no matter who or what institution produced it. In this tutorial, we will look at another example in the final chapter of my book related to a drug called rosacobib, marketed as Vioxx, taken off the market in 2004 because of the increased risk of heart attacks from taking the drug. We would question whether or not the pharmaceutical company that produced the drug knew it was causing heart attacks when they first brought it to market in the year 2000. Finally, we will discuss the drug known as Oxycontin, a major contributor to the opioid crisis in the US, which has ravaged so many American communities. In both cases, we will question the integrity of the individuals who ensured these drugs were brought to market. On May 20th, 1999, the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, approved a drug for acute pain called Vioxx. On September 30th, 2004, Vioxx was taken off the market because of increased risk of heart attack for individuals taking the drug. Over the 4 years that Vioxx was on the market, annual sales revenue were around $2.5 billion, an approximate total revenue of $10 billion. In 2007, Merck, the maker of the drug, settled 27,000 lawsuits for $4.8 billion from family members who claimed their loved ones suffered a heart attack or died after taking Vioxx. FDA investigator David Graham estimated that 140,000 people in the US suffered heart attacks as a result of taking Vioxx. This number is most likely an accurate estimate. As we will discuss, 0.4% of patients in a large study published in the year 2000 suffered heart attacks while on Vioxx. Out of 4 million Americans who took the drug after its release, that percentage would translate to 160,000 heart attacks. Of course, a certain number of these people would have gotten a heart attack regardless of whether they took Vioxx or not, making the number 140,000 a good estimate of the number of people who got a heart attack as a result of taking Vioxx. Graham estimated that 60,000 people died as a result of their heart attack. Also, it must be remembered, we are only talking about the US. According to Wikipedia, 80 million people were prescribed Vioxx worldwide. When you do the calculations, that is a lot of people suffering heart attacks and possibly death from a drug that should never have gotten to market. Leading up to and during the person injury trial in 2006, 11 leading authors of the journal article discussing the results of a large study involving Vioxx continue to defend the results of the trial. As we will see, this study contained strong statistical evidence that there was 4 times the risk of getting a heart attack from taking Vioxx compared to taking a drug called naproxen, better known as Aleve. This statistic translated into 17 Vioxx patients versus 4 Aleve patients having heart attacks in this study. The results of the large study were published in the New England Journal of Medicine in a journal article titled Comparison of Upper Gastrointestinal Toxicity of Rosacobib and Naproxen in Patients with Rheumatoid Arthritis. It will become clear when we question the statistics presented in the journal article, the efforts the leading authors of the study made to hide or obfuscate the true results of the study. We will see the efforts they made to ensure a drug got to market that they knew was going to kill thousands of innocent people. Even though they did this and lied about it in court, none of them were penalized in any way. In fact, many of them went on to have prestigious careers. 49-second video clip on YouTube should give you a clearer sense of the level of deceit by the individuals involved in the study. The video clip should appear as the 5th or 6th video in the list after searching for Lauren Lane Vioxx. It is an outtake from an interview Merck put together to send to the news media when they were defending their case that they did not know there were any problems with Vioxx before it got approved. The clip shows Lauren Lane, one of the leading authors of the journal article, being interviewed by a Merck employee posing as an interviewer. Lauren Lane points out that, quote, "We were cagey," end quote, about any discussion in the journal article regarding renal problems with the use of Vioxx. He tells the fake interviewer that we probably shouldn't go there. Before we question the results of the study, we need to define what we mean by the statistic known as relative risk. Risk is a term used in epidemiology, the study and analysis of health outcomes and diseases in populations. It is defined as the probability that a particular outcome, such as heart attack or death, will occur. Relative risk is a statistic that compares one group's risk of a particular outcome relative to another group. If the relative risk is 3, then the risk of a particular outcome is 3 times the risk for one group relative to another group. If the relative risk is 0.5, then the risk of a particular outcome is half the risk for one group relative to another group. Your understanding of relative risk will become clearer once we see how relative risk was calculated for outcomes in the Vioxx study. The study was a randomized experiment with a total of 8,076 patients enrolled. 4,047 patients were randomly assigned to receive rofecoxib, Vioxx, and 4,029 patients received naproxen, Aleve. This is considered a very large sample size. The sample statistics are expected to be very good estimates of the population parameters of interest. The abstract on the first page of the journal article presents a summary of the results of the study. Vioxx was primarily a pain relief drug for rheumatoid arthritis. The study results found that Vioxx and Aleve had similar effectiveness against rheumatoid arthritis. However, in this particular study, the researchers wanted to find evidence that Vioxx caused a lower number of gastrointestinal events than Aleve. There were 2.1 confirmed gastrointestinal events per 100 patient years for patients on Vioxx, compared to 4.5 per 100 patient years with Aleve. The relative risk was equal to 0.5, and the results were considered statistically significant with a p-value less than 0.001. The results for respective rates of complicated confirmed events was presented in a similar and consistent way. However, when it came to discussing the incidence of myocardial infarctions or heart attacks, the language changed. The researchers stated that the incidence of myocardial infarctions was lower among patients in the Aleve group without presenting any statistics. When we look at the results presented for heart attacks more closely, we will see that they reversed the way in which they calculated relative risk, making the statistic appear less alarming. Also, they did not present the p-value associated with this relative risk. Finally, they stated that the rate of death from cardiovascular causes was similar in the two groups, without presenting any statistics. This type of presentation of results is not what you expect in a peer-reviewed journal article published in the New England Journal of Medicine. We will now take a closer look at how relative risk was calculated for gastrointestinal events and for heart attacks. The risk of gastrointestinal events on Vioxx was 2.1 per 100 patient years, or 0.021. The risk on Aleve was 4.5 per 100 patient years, or 0.045. Again, relative risk is a value that compares one group's risk of developing a particular outcome relative to another group. In this case, the relative risk for gastrointestinal events was 0.5, calculated as shown. It is accepted and proper practice to list the primary drug of interest, Vioxx, first, or on top, and then the comparator drug Aleve on the bottom of the calculation. As we can see, this is what the researchers did in this case. However, when comparing the incidence of myocardial infarction, heart attack, how the relative risk was calculated was not consistent with how it was calculated for the primary results. The risk of heart attack on Vioxx was 0.004 or 0.4%, representing the 17 patients who got heart attacks while on Vioxx. The risk of heart attack on Aleve was 0.001 or 0.1%, representing the 4 patients who got heart attacks while on Aleve. In this case, the relative risk for heart attacks was presented as 0.2, calculated as shown here. The relative risk was calculated by dividing 0.001 by 0.004, the risk on Aleve over the risk on a Vioxx, the reverse of how it was calculated for the primary analysis of gastrointestinal events. At this stage, the following questions come to mind. Why did the researchers reverse how they calculated relative risk when it came to the incidence of heart attacks? If they had been consistent in their calculations, the relative risk for heart attack would have equaled 4, meaning 4 times the risk of heart attack on Vioxx compared to Aleve. Did they feel that the relative risk of 4 would be easier to understand and therefore more alarming to the reader? Why would the researchers present the relative risk as 0.2 instead of 0.25, making Vioxx look worse to the educated reader when it comes to the risk of heart attacks than it actually was? Why did the researchers not provide the rate of death from cardiovascular diseases, instead of simply stating it was similar in both groups? Why did peer review at the New England Journal of Medicine not question how the results of the study was presented? How come the FDA did not catch the problems with the drug? Finally, why did the researchers present the p-values of the primary analysis and not for the analysis of heart attacks? Did individuals working for Merck know that Vioxx was causing heart attacks before the drug was brought to market? If you still have any doubts as to the answer to this last question, a quick internet search should remove any doubt. Yes, individuals working for Merck, right up to top executives, knew the drug caused heart attacks, but went along with ensuring it got to market. As mentioned earlier, no one went to prison for their actions, and many went on to have very prestigious careers. The company had to pay out billions in lawsuits, but that is simply the cost of doing business. Another pain medication approved by the FDA that has led to far more deaths than Vioxx is called Oxycontin, approved for use in 1996. Purdue Pharma, the pharmaceutical company that manufactured the drug, went on a massive marketing campaign to physicians and the public without disclosing the fact that the drug was highly addictive. Oxycontin went on to become the most highly abused painkiller in the United States and a major contributor to the opiate crisis. As a New York Times article pointed out, the owners of Purdue Pharma were directly involved in the efforts to mislead physicians and the public about the dangers of the drug. Richard Sackler, son of the founder of Purdue Pharma, advised doctors to prescribe the highest and most profitable doses and push the blame onto patients who got addicted, stating, "They are the culprits and the problem. They are the reckless criminals." The Sackler family has made so much money from pushing its drug that it is most likely none of its members would go to prison. However, as a society, we have to push for the changes necessary to ensure there are real consequences for these sorts of white-collar crimes. These people are playing with our lives in the pursuit of money and power. The only thing we know for certain in this world of ours is that we have one very short life to live. With the advent of the coronavirus pandemic, we are more aware of how fragile and precious life truly is. No one deserves to lose everything they are and everything they could be in this way. Their families and loved ones should not have to suffer such a premature and painful loss. Punishment for these sorts of crimes should amount to more than a hit to the almighty bottom line. Punishment should fit the crime. If that is not the truth, then I don't know what is. We have come to the end of these set of tutorials based on examples and content in my book titled Statistical Thinking Show Me the Examples. It was a labour of love, as were these tutorials, from a teacher to anyone who wishes to better understand how to reason with the world of information and data. The world is and always has been an uncertain place. However, if we learn to reason with uncertainty with calm, focus, discipline, and good statistical thinking, we can find a way through. Thank you for taking the time to listen and learn. I wish you all the best. Try to stay healthy and take care.